Himalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Padarayanam Sutra Bhashyakritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaye Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let's chant the Dhyana Shlokam together. Now we know, all of us know the Dhyana Shlokam.
कटाक्षकिरणान्तनमन्मोहाभये नमः
अनन्तां
कृष्णाय
कृष्णाय
जगन्मङ्गलमूर्तये
जगन्मङ्गलमूर्तये
We are studying that portion of this, which I think is personally the real understanding of Atmajnanam. Because Shastra has no choice but to use words, where we know words with themselves are inadequate to understand what is Brahman or Atma or I. Earlier in the introduction, I think, to these 3 verses, Swamiji said that we require minimum 3 words. If I say Satyam, it should be adequate. But the irony is, it is adequate after I understand. 1 word is enough. But till I understand, I need to use all the 3 words in what Shastra calls its Lakshyartha. Our orientation is strongly to look at the word and the meaning that we know of the meaning of those words. We have to overcome that and look at the word meaning, which itself forms the very adhisthana for our initial understanding of those words. Why should we use Satyam, Jnanam and Anandam or Anantam, they're both the same, is what is going to be discussed in these 3 verses. The verses themselves are very nice, but more than the verses, because this is the Manana Grantha, it definitely requires a lot of thought and discussions. How do you understand Satyam? How do you understand Satyam with respect to all objects? But with respect to Atma, how do you understand the word Satyam? We use words like Vatsyartha and Lakshyartha. That also we need to understand the meaning. That also can create confusion. What is Vatsyartha? What is Lakshyartha? So a lot more opening up these words and what Shastra is trying to convey requires it to be open for discussion. And Swamiji has talked a lot about all of these 3 verses. We are still in the first one where he talks about Satyam. To a person who's understood, that is enough. But till we understand, our thinking is still very much an object-oriented thinking. Therefore, we need the other words. And I think we read this last time. I don't know. I don't remember if we read this last time. But the word Satyam, when we think of the word Satyam with reference to objects, it is always in a time frame, bound by time. Satyam, first we have to understand it refers to existence. An object is existent. But an object is existent in time. It appears in time t1 and will disappear as that object in time t2. Surprisingly, this happens so many times. In the Kathopanishad class also, we are roughly talking the same thing at the same time. How do you separate Atma and Anatma? How do you understand Atma vis-a-vis Anatma? How do you understand Anatma vis-a-vis Atma? There it takes as an upachara, it takes indriyas. And the objects of indriyas themselves, and shows that they are bound in time. Appear at one time, disappear another time. During the time, they are also changing. And therefore, they are all anatma. Here also, we've got to understand this. How do you free the word satyam as existence from our tightly bound concept of satyam, which is within time? Something came into existence at some point, it was not there before, abhava. And it existed, kept changing till another time t2, when it again, in that form, became non-available. This is our concept of any existence of any object. When you say satyam with respect to Atma, how do you free it of this time restrictions? That is why you need a second word. To free our mind, like I said, if the person's already understood, I don't need another word. Satyam is enough. But till that clarity comes, even to bring that clarity, I need a second word. To free the meaning of the word satyam from the meaning of the word satyam that I normally understand as bound by time. Free it of the time scale completely. And the other issue that is often there is for us to understand that this Atma is not a Jadavastu. Atma is that's why when we talk about the Karya Karana Prakriya, we say Karanam, we split that into two parts. We say there is a Jada Karanam in terms of material, and there's an intelligent Karanam called Nimitta Karanam. And to bring that Chaitanyam of this Atma, the Chit Swarupa of the Atma, it is not another Jadavastu from which something is born. We need a third word. So these three verses very beautifully bring that out. So what we have been reading about is the word Satyam. And we'll continue to read. I think there are still a few more paragraphs left in this. And then move on to Jnanam and Anantam. And I would very strongly recommend at any point in time something is not clear, open it for discussion. This is probably certainly in my opinion, the key thing to understand. And having once understood this, then the other critical thing is to understand that this Atma, which is the only existent thing, and I are the same. That's the next step. That once we get there, you're a jnani. So we spend as much time as you want in discussing these three words, Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, and how to understand this. What is the Vachyartha? What does it mean? When you say Vachyartha, what does it mean? What does it mean when you say Lakshyartha? They use different words in the English translation. We use words like intended meaning, target meaning. We use several words you will find in the books. What does it exactly mean? So it's something I'd definitely like to open up for discussions. And we are not going to hurry through this. We're going to really read it, absorb it, open it up, discuss it, and move forward. If I remember right, we were starting to read this paragraph on page 278. We read some of it, but we decided we'll start it with the beginning of the paragraph. Yes, Divyansh.
Swamiji, just one clarification. So when we say like for an object, asti bhati priyam nama rupa. So in that also, like when we say asti bhati, are we talking about the normal word meaning that asti means it exists, or is it a lakshartha there as well?
Who wants to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, for any object, when you talk about that 5 features, Asti Bhati Priyam, then Nama Rupa, the Asti Bhati Priyam is like a borrowed nature, right? It is not the inherent nature of the object. So existence, that is Asti, Bhati, and Priyam, are actually borrowed. It is not its original property, right? So it is a borrowed nature. Just
No.
like
Yeah,
what?
I know, I get that, but I'm asking is that
That
there do
refers
we
to Satyam Jnanam Anantam only. Correct.
no, I'm saying like do we see it as the Vachyartha or the Lakshyartha of those words? Asti Bhati Priyam. Like when we say Satyam Jnanam Anantam, right? All the three words point to a one thing only, right? But here, are we like talking about the, let's say, for a an object? I know, okay, we can say that the to exist is not the inherent property. To be self-shining is not the inherent property of that object. That we understand. But when we say Asti Bhati Priyam, are we pointing out that okay, even if it is inherited property, but still, like this object for now has that property, right? It is
Correct.
it.
Correct. So all the 5 we talk in reference to an object. Worldly
So
object only we say these 5 things, right?
So those are properties only over there, not
Correct.
Lakshartha.
Correct. From a Vyavaharika sense, all these 5 features we can see in any object.
Okay, ठीक है.
But 3 of them are not its
Of them,
inherent nature.
right.
Nama Rupa is its inherent nature, if you want to say that, right?
No, मतलब वो भी नहीं है, लेकिन ठीक है.
Correct, because that is
Okay,
mithya. Finally, we'll negate that as mithya. But if you want to
okay.
say whether it belongs to, because Nama Rupa doesn't belong to Atma. So from that sense, you can separate that 2 versus these 3. These 3 are borrowed from Atma.
But we can say that also, na, कि these three do not belong to Atma. Atma, like in terms we understand that. In terms we understand exist, like is, like it something exists, something is like we are conscious of. In that, like Vachyartha, it does not mean Atma. The Lakshartha of these three is Atma, right?
No, no.
Like these are not the properties. Like these are not the properties.
These are
are not
not
the
the properties
qualities.
of Atma,
These are not the qualities of
but
Atma.
it appears as properties of the object.
हाँ
So that's why you be clear what you are talking about. 5 properties. Now don't jump to Atma. 5 properties of the object.
हाँ तो
Right?
वही
Out of that 5, you can divide it into 2 categories. Nama Rupa is part of the Mithyatma, the realm, and
Yes.
Asti Bhati Priyam is borrowed from, as though borrowed from Atma.
ठीक.
Okay, shall we start the reading? Who will read today?
I can read.
No. Yeah, please do.
So page 278, second paragraph.
Yeah.
But now we have a new problem. If you say that Brahman is Satyam Anantam, we have this Karana Buddhi in Brahman. And our orientation is that anything which is a Karanam, a cause, is Jadam, insentient, like clay. Then we may think that Satyam the Vastu is also Jadam, it being Jagat Karanam. Therefore, the Shruti uses another appropriate word to remove this idea of Brahman being insentient. For that, we have another word, Jnanam. So, Brahman is Satyam Jnanam. What does Satyam Jnanam mean? The Satyam in every form of Jnanam, Jnata, Jnanam, Jneyam, meaning that which is the Satyam of the knower, that which is the Satyam of the knowledge, that which is the Satyam of the known. Therefore, all three of them are sustained by which that is Satyam. That means all these three are Mithya, depending upon Satyam. Mithya means it has no independent existence. Like in dream, you have mountains and valleys, but all that is there is one surface, consciousness. Similarly, here also, this Jnata, Jnanam, Jneyam, all three of them are sustained by one Satyam. And
We
what
have
is that
a hand
Satyam?
up.
He himself says.
One second, Shobha. We have a hand up.
Swamiji, in like page 278 last line, it's written every form of jnana, jnata, jnanam, jneyam. So jnanam is written twice. Is it a typo or something?
No. When we talk of jnanam, it has all 3 components, right? They are components of jnanam.
Jnanam
The
means knowledge,
satyam
right?
in every form of jnanam, any knowledge that is available to us of objects, has 3 components. The jnatru, the jneyam, and what you again using the same word jnanam because that's what we have available. The actual knowing, object of knowledge, and the knower. That is how we see all 3 together. So any knowledge you talk about in the Jagat has all these 3 components. That's all he's saying. And each one of these 3 depends on Satyam for its existence. There is no Jnata without Satyam. There is no Jneyam without the Satyam. And there is no Jnanam of any object without the Satyam.
So jnanam in these three is knowing, and the other jnanam is knowledge.
I have a feeling that you're trying to split hairs.
No,
Just this should you understand that when we say Satyam means Brahman is Satyam Jnanam. That's what we come to so far. For us, the
Oh, acha,
word
okay.
Jnanam, sorry?
Okay, like
Correct?
Jnanam in Satyam Jnanam Anantam, that Jnanam you're
Yeah,
talking.
yeah.
Okay.
All right. Anybody wants to add to any of these discussions, please add them. I don't have to talk all the time. We are now a group which is, I think, very advanced. So anybody wants to add anything to it, you're welcome to do that. Yeah, let's continue.
So all three of them are sustained by one Satyam. And what is that Satyam? He himself says that Satyam is Jnanam. It need not be said even, but still to make sure, another word is there, Jnanam. What is that Jnanam? It is not the knower, it is not knowledge of a given object, it is Jnanam Jnaptihi Bhava Sadhanam. It is Jnaptihi, which is consciousness, which obtains in every form of knowledge. The knower is but consciousness. Every knowledge is consciousness. The known also is consciousness. Therefore, it is Satyam, which is in the form of Jnanam, Chaitanyam. Satyam Jnanam Anantam, limitless consciousness, is Atma. That is the meaning of Sattvam used in this verse. Therefore, when we use the word Satyam, we have to bring in Jnanam and we have to bring in Anantam. That is Atma. Atmanaha Swarupam is Sattvam. The
You want to
existence
go
of
back and read the verse
consciousness.
itself? Well, some time ago we read the verse.
Swarupameva me Sattvam natu dharmo nabhastvavate madanyasya sato bhava nahi sa jatirishyate.
Madannasya sataha abhavat. Other than me, there is no Satyam. Okay.
Atmanaha Swarupam is Sattvam. The existence of consciousness is the Swarupa of consciousness because that isness of consciousness never goes. And that isness is lent to anything that is appreciated by you as an existent thing. Space is, time is, star is, sun is, moon is, galaxies are. All these are objects of consciousness. Mind-boggling. It is mind-boggling, but it is not consciousness-boggling. Atma, consciousness, is the only thing which is unlike everything else. In the sense, everything else is avastu, and Atma is the vastu. Therefore, Atmanaha Sattvam is me Swarupam, Mama Swarupam. It is not an attribute of Atma. We do not visualize an Atma other than Sattvam, having the quality of Sattvam, like Nilo Ghataha, where we visualize a pot and then it has a color making it a blue pot. Sattvam existence is the Swarupa. That is why that Sattvam jatihi na ishyate. Swarupameva me Sattvam natu dharmaha iti. It is not an attribute. Nabhastvatva, Nabhastvavat. Nabhas is the space. Nabhastvavat akashatvam iva. Why that example is given? Because space has no jati. There is only one space available. There is no second space available. Even though you say Nabhastvam is its dharma, still space is not a jati. A second space not being there, jati is not there. Vayu has jati, hydrogen, etc. Even Agni has jati, different temperatures, etc. To the latent heat of an object, etc., we can assign some jati. But you cannot give a jati for Akasha. Akasha remains Akasha. There is no pollution of space. There is only pollution of the atmosphere. Debris in space, which is called space junk, is a new problem.
It's become quite
But
a major
space is
problem
not
now.
polluted.
Space junk. The whole world is looking at saying what to do. When we started all the space adventure, we didn't think of this. Yes, Divyansh?
Swamiji, I read somewhere. So we are saying that Akasha is only one, but don't we have subjective Akasha? For me, Akasha is like this, right? But for a mosquito or something which have different eyes and different perception, they may have different Akasha, right?
No, how? Akasha is space. How would
Observed
it be
space,
different space?
right?
How would it have different space? A mosquito may have a limited space, vision, but not a different space, the same space.
Okay. And is the dream space different from the waking space?
Dream space is something we've created. The dreamer creates the dream space. It is not space that in fact the space in the dream is another level of mithya.
Another order of reality. Yeah.
Okay. ठीक है.
Space remains space. That is why Nabhastvavat. Nabhastvavat Atmanah me na jatihi. The existence of Atma is like existence of Atma alone. In fact, that existence is the Swarupa of the Atma, Mad Anyasya Sataha Abhavat, because there is nothing other than me. Sataha means Sadvastunaha. Another object existing independently of me is not there. Mad Atmanaha Anyasya Sataha Abhavat. An object that is other than the Atma, independent of the existence of the Atma, not being there, nahi sa jatirishyate. Sa jatihi na ishyate means tat sattvam jatihi na ishyate. Sattvam existence has no jati, meaning there is no second Atma to enjoy the Sattvam. There is only one Atma. Anya Vastu is not there. Atma itself is Jnanam and Atma itself is Ananda. He is going to prove this. Ananda means limitless, not bliss. If it means bliss, there is no communication. This is another problem. Existence, knowledge, bliss, etc. is a popular translation for Satchit Ananda. The moment you say bliss, it becomes experiential. Once it is experiential, it is beyond communication. They translate Ananda wrongly and then say that it is beyond communication. Bliss cannot be the truth. Bliss is truth, but the truth is not bliss. Truth is limitlessness, and that is what you experience in all forms of happiness. That limitlessness, Anantam, is implied by the word Ananda. So Ananda is a Lakshanam, not Vachyam. So Vastu is not Ananda Shabda Vachyam, it is Ananda Shabda Lakshyam. Similarly, Vastu is not Sat Shabda Vachyam, it is Sat Shabda Lakshyam. And it is not Jnana Shabda Vachyam, it is Jnana Shabda Lakshyam.
Somebody like to talk for a few minutes on this
When
last paragraph, which I think is the sum of all this being said. How do you translate Satchidananda?
This paragraph only talked about Ananda, right, Swami?
Yeah, but then it talks about how do you translate it? Translate as existence, knowledge, and bliss. And then he goes on to talk about bliss. But what do we understand by Satchidananda? And what is the wrong perception that takes place in our minds? Why does the wrong perception take place? Why is it important for the teacher to open it out and communicate in such a fashion that we understand that despite our notion of what is Satyam, what is Jnanam, what is Anandam or Anantam, we are able to see past all that meaning and see what is the nature of the Vastu. In all of these words, what do you do? Satyam is existence. Okay. Existence, if we don't understand correctly, what does that mean? That something is existing now but may not exist tomorrow. That is not the existence that Satyam is talking about. So unless one is very clear and one explains this distinctly, that's why I wanted somebody to talk about this paragraph and talk about what the meaning of Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam or Satchidananda would be and how do we explain to somebody the meaning of these words.
Yeah. Swamiji, can I?
Yes, please, please.
Okay. So we'll take one by one. Satyam. So Satyam, the popular misconception is we equate it to Vyavaharika truth. So here the clarity we should have is it is not that. It is the absolute truth. So what is the difference between Vyavaharika and absolute truth? Absolute truth is that which denotes an absolute independent existence. It is not dependent on anything else. All the other Vyavaharika, the Jagat, anything in the Jagat, it only has a dependent existence, right? Though it is somehow coming in our experience, but it doesn't have an independent existence, right? So that which is there in Vyavaharika sense, also we refer it as Satyam, whereas here the Satyam is referring to Paramarthika Satyam, which is absolute truth, which is absolute independent existence. Now the second word, Jnanam. Jnanam is again popularly confused as any worldly knowledge. So it cannot be equated to worldly knowledge. Here, Jnanam is that which enables us to do this whole knowing process. So that which enables a knower to be there, some object of knowledge and the process of knowing. So all of these three is enabled by something, and that something is what we call as jnanam or consciousness or knowingness or awareness, right? So that is the distinction we have to have in our head when we talk about the word jnanam, because the same jnanam is used in the Vyavaharika sense, whereas this is in the Paramarthika sense. Similarly, the third word, ananda, very, very popularly misconceived as equated to happiness. And that is where people make the mistake of just extending the intensity of happiness and calling it bliss. That is how the word bliss has come, right? But that is completely wrong. So we have to understand the root of this ananda has come from ananta, right? So the Upanishad says Satyam Jnanam Anantam. So that from Anantam only Ananda has come. How does it come? Anantam is infinite, right? That which is not limited by space, time, or objects. So it is complete, Purnatva, right? And why is that connected to Ananda, which is, we typically look at Ananda as any kind of happiness. So that is where we have to have clarity about happiness. What is happiness? Happiness is a momentary or transient sense of completeness. When we experience a sense of completeness, that feeling is what we call as feeling happy. That is Ananda. So Ananda is that sense of completeness, which in the worldly sense does not last long, right? It lasts only till, because all this is in your head in the form of vritti, in the mind, right? So as long as that vritti is in your active domain or active memory, that is when the happiness lasts. Once some other vritti comes and takes over its main place, action, then the happiness is gone. So it is vritti janyam, but that vritti is actually that it gives you a sense of completeness for that moment, right? So that completeness has come from Anantam, because Anantam is infinite, Purnatva. So the right word instead of bliss is actually, instead of happiness or bliss is Purnatvam, is more clearer, no confusion, right? Then if you want to see the equivalent English word, I feel always contentment is better than happiness. So contentment gives less room for confusion, right? So, but it is actually Purnatvam. So that strictly speaking, if you want to define happiness, it is the sense of completeness, right? So
Very
that's
good.
the
Anybody else?
distinction.
Can I try, Swamiji?
Sure.
Okay. Uh, so first, like we discussed that. Okay, so like Satchidananda and Satyam Jnanam Anantam are like equivalent words. Like these are Sat and Satyam, Chit and Jnanam, and Ananda and Anantam are same words. They are used like interchangeably. So like we discussed that these are not attributes of Atma. Like when we say Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. So generally in language we have substance and then we have um the quality, like a red rose, things like that. So it's not that. So Satyam represents as a Lakshyartha directly Brahman. Jnanam directly as a Lakshyartha points to Brahman, and Ananta directly points to Brahman. So these three words directly belongs to Brahman in Lakshyartha sense. In the Lokika sense, they looks very like unrelated. Like Satyam is true, Jnanam is knowledge, and consciousness is no sorry, Ananda is bliss. So their Vachartha looks unrelated, but when we talk about the Lakshartha, all three are just the pointers to Brahman. Also, Jayaji said that the word Ananda is used. I think it was in Viveka Chudamani, or I'm not sure, maybe I read somewhere else, that the Ananda word used is also because that we have four Purusharthas, right? And among all the Purusharthas, we are only seeking Ananda, Lokika Ananda only. But all three, like Artha, Kama, Dharma, provide Ananda, but that is limited. So to have another uh, 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 goal, Purushartha, in the same category, they also put Ananda here as well. But this is kind of like infinite Ananda, or we can say, I will like explain after this. So we have three words, Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, or Satchit Ananda, right? So when we take about Satyam, it looks in the Lokika sense, it means true. Like it is true, it is false. Like in courtroom, Swamiji says that arguments are true or false, right? Something exists, something does not exist. So, but beyond this existence and non-existence, there is there is Brahman which makes an object to exist or not to exist. Or we can say, wait. So we know the presence of an object. We also know the absence of an object. So when we say an object is, and when we say an object is not, that we can say absence of that object is. So presence of an object or absence of object, both are qualifying the isness. So that isness which makes an object to exist or not exist, that isness is Brahman, and by that we mean Satyam. So we can talk about the duality. Like by Satyam, Lokika Satyam, we say it exists, and its negative is it does not exist. But what makes possible for an object to exist or its absence also to exist, that is the Brahman that we are talking about. Like Jayaji also mentioned that the existence for an object is not its intrinsic quality. So when we say that, like example of fireball, hot iron ball, right? So we know that there are two things. One is fire and other is the iron ball. Iron ball does not have an intrinsic property of heat. So you put it somewhere else, it will cool down, it will become cool, right? So that hotness is coming from fire. We can cognitively separate these two things, hotness that coming from fire and iron ball. Similarly, if we say, let's say this mouse is, right, in some time it will disintegrate, right? It will disintegrate to pieces or whatever. It will remain as a plastic or whatever. The mouse will cease to exist. That means the existence was not the inherent property of this mouse. If it had that inherent property, it would have remained to exist from the, like, both time pehle till eternity. It should have existed just like this. But the to exist is not its it's not its intrinsic property. It borrows it um, from the Brahman, just like iron ball borrows heat from the fire. So that is the Satyam. And then we have the Jnanam. So Jnanam in normal knowledge is like normal usage, we mean that knowledge about something. So let's say I know French language, right? That is the Lokika means of knowledge. But I also know the things that I do not know. Like I do not know Spanish. So I am aware that I have certain knowledge about some things. I'm also aware that I do not have knowledge about some other things. So what makes this knowledge possible and this knowledge of absence of thing possible? That thing, the awareness, that is Brahman. Um, and that is the, like, if you see, like, these are the same things we discussed in existence also. What makes the existence of one thing possible and absence of that thing possible? Here I am having the cognition of this thing and absence of cognition of absence of this thing. So this is possibly made by Brahman. And then we have the Ananta. So Swamiji, we say that it's also a spectrum. Like Ananda, we have bliss, and Anananda, like sorrow, deep misery, or whatever. But what makes that possible? What makes to that bliss to be cognized, and that's Anananda to be cognized? That is Brahman. It's not the bliss or the Anananda itself. And also, this Ananda is a main thing, because I think in Vivek Chudamani we discussed that when you say Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma is you, right? So by Satyam, when I said existence, I know I exist, right? I know the Satyam, I can relate to it. By Jnanam also, I know that I am aware being. I'm not a like Jada Vastu. But the Ananta part that qualifies both Satyam and Jnanam, that this Vastu is Anantam. That is the, I think, the thing that only Shastra reveals, that the nature of I is Ananta. So I think, bas, that.
Any other inputs, very excellent inputs by both these people. I think it clears up a lot of things. But any other point, any other things you want to add?
There are three types of realities. One is paramartic, which is absolute truth. The second one is vyavaharik, the transactional one. The third one is in between these two. But only absolute truth is the real truth. The rest is all has got its own the upadhis. So ultimately, the real truth is Brahman. That's the only one which is true. So when you say Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, if it is from the absolute point of view, it is knowledge, it is the truth, and it is the whole truth, nothing but the truth. But it is colored in the vyavaharik, because the transactional thing is, we see a lot of upadhis in this thing, and then it gets colored. So, and the third one is the in between these two. So the absolute Brahman is the only one. Everything else is upadhi, has got its upadhi, and it's not permanent. It is not. It's only fleeting. So when we say the Brahman is Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, and limitless, the Jivatma and Brahmatma, if you remove the upadhis both sides, the Ishvara minus the Ishvaratvam, that is the Maya, and Jivatma minus the Jivatvam, and what is left is the core, that is only Brahman, which is Satyam. This is my
Can I
understanding.
add
Good.
a little bit? So the Vachyartha of these words point to everything that's limited by time, space, and objects, whereas Lakshyartha itself, on the other side, everything is dependent on that one Brahman. So time and space and everything arises from that one Brahman. So I think that's kind of the difference, the main difference really, right, between Vachyartha and Lakshyartha.
I will just add just one point. So, so far we have been seeing like how the Vachyartha differs from the Lakshyartha of when we refer to Brahman. So we all have like the entire purpose of the studying this is to start from a point where we confuse things. So when we confuse the Vachyartha with Lakshyartha, that is kind of the starting point where we mistake ourselves to be this body, we take this Jagat to be real. So in all the experiences that I have is real, is where our starting point is. And then when we start trying to inquire and do some vichara about this, we start to see the reality step by step. So that is where these words are being used, because something which is not in my perception is not, it's not possible for us to understand something which is not in our perception. So every knowledge that we have in this jagat is through our perception. So perception forms the basis of our knowledge of every object that every transactions that take place around us. But something which is not in our perception, it is almost impossible to imagine, to understand something which is not in our perception. So if a person, for example, if somebody who has never tasted sugar or any sweets in their life, it is not possible for another person to explain that taste to that person, because how can one person explain in words what sweet means? Because it is not in the perception. So unless I can describe so many things, but it is like just explaining colors to a blind person. So it is not possible to understand something which is not in my perception. So if this poses the biggest challenge, if we say that Atma or Brahman is not in our perception, then this poses the biggest challenge for us to understand Brahman. But this fact is negated because in every experience that we have in our life, the Satyam is throughout, the Jnanam is throughout, the Anantam is throughout, it is truth in all our experiences. If we look at every experience, what is the truth of that experience is always Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam. So, the important thing that we see here is because we make this mistake of taking something unreal, or because we make this mistake of taking Jagat to be real and our experiences to be real, we confuse the Vachyartha, which is the Satyam Jnanam Anantam, or which is the true existence consciousness within the Jagat, to be the limited ones. So we by mistake we take all these to be the reality, and therefore we are seeing these differences. But once when we try to reconcile all these, then there is no actual difference between Satyam, Jnanam, and it is just for the purpose of understanding that there is no difference. We are creating this difference because in our perception the difference is the reality. So we start from our perception and then go towards saying that okay, what you see is, it is just the perception, but if you try to look beyond the perception, then in the truth of every experience that we have is nothing but the Satyam Jnanam Anantam. And finally, the place, once we clear all our doubts through this Mananam, okay, once we are able to see, okay, so all the Vachyartha of Satyam Jnanam Anantam is all the same, then that's where the Nididhyasanam becomes important, because let Atma be Satyam Jnanam Anantam. What do I gain out of it? So I still suffer, I still have problems tomorrow, I still have to manage my family, I still have to manage my. So all these stuff, like we clear the doubts and then we contemplate upon it to own up that knowledge that this Brahma or Atma, Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, all these words that we use, all always refers back to the only thing, which is I. And that I, again, once devoid of all the doubts, that remains the Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, or whatever words we use, Atma, Brahman, that is the reality that we are trying to understand and try to own up that knowledge that I am that Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma. So, yeah.
Very good. Any other inputs? I don't see Ratnamji today. All what you said are all correct. And I think it shows the depth of understanding that we have as a group. It's like anything which we use a word for, it qualifies something. So if you say something exists, then that something has to come. Something exists. Some object, something exists or not exists. That when you talk about Satyam existence, it is Atma. There is no of Atma. You can't say Satyam of Atma. Satyam is Atma, same thing. Whereas here we look at it, it is of something, existence of something, jnanam of something or somebody, ananda, same kind of thing. So this is one thing we can see. Another thing we can see between this lakshyartha, vachyartha differences also, that anything which is a vachyartha, which is of something, will always have an opposite. If you say it exists, you also say something does not exist, or the same thing does not exist, another point of time. Somebody mentioned, I think Divyansh mentioned this. This is a very important difference that we can see. Anything which is belonging to an object of the Jagat can have both. And that which is aware of both, or that which is making the existence of existence and non-existence possible, that which makes the existence of knowledge and ignorance possible, that which makes the existence of Ananda and Ananda possible, that one Vastu is called Atma. We have studied elsewhere, Chakshusas Chakshuhu, Manaso Manaha. That which make the eyes behave like eyes, be eyes. To see, to not see, to see partially, etc. That is what is defined as the Atma, Chakshusas Chakshuhu, or Manaso Mana. Everything, similarly here, if you look at this, anything that makes Satyam, Satyasya Satyam, if you want, no object is involved. That is the Vastu, that is Atma. And one of you mentioned, I think it was Anand who also mentioned, we can look at it as a scholar. I've clearly defined it. This has got one and a positive and a negative, positive and negative, and I looked at it. This is all Pachyartha, this is Lakshyartha. But one has to go a step beyond that. That Vastu, indivisible, unchanging Vastu, I have to understand as the nature of I. And that is one transition which is not so very easy to do. After all this intense thinking, I'm still dealing with I as this body-mind sense complex. Unfortunately, if you have to transact in the Jagat, it is necessary. Therefore, Swamiji's beautiful distinction is saying, I have an ahankara because I need to transact with the world. But having understood that ahankara becomes an enlightened ahankara. It is still there, it is still operating, it is still doing everything that needs to be done in the Jagat. That step also will come. It will not come very easily. That's what he mentioned in Nididhyasana. But we are still trying to clear up all the doubts. And this, I believe, these three verses will give us an excellent depth of clarity on this issue. Yes, Divyansh, one more point. We don't have too much time. If it's something you can quickly take up, let's do it.
Like one more thing I forgot, that like Swamiji mentioned that the Vachyartha and Lakshyartha thing. So Swamiji said that you also said that we can't get this knowledge without a guru who knows how to use the words to point to something that the words in the Lokika sense do not point to. So, like Swamiji, because the language is also like, when we say language has only 5 types of things that it can represent, jati, guna, kriya. So Swamiji, fifth one was noun. I saw nomenclature of things. But whatever. So these 5 things cannot represent Atma. So they only point to some objective thing that is always limited. So yeah, we need to have a guru that maybe uses techniques like paradoxes, like smaller than smallest, bigger than biggest, or something like neti neti or something like that. That because we can't put the Brahman into certain, like in some words. But this like brings to me one question, that how did like Einstein or Schopenhauer, who were studying Upanishads, how did they, like, did they understand what was written?
I doubt very much. They're brilliant people. The minds are very, very high IQ. They may have got, I don't know, If they have gone to a guru and learned, they would probably got it. But my suspicion is that they only recognize that the answer does not answer beyond science. Therefore, they started looking elsewhere for the answers. Whether they actually got the answer, whether they got that Atmajnanam, I am not sure. I don't think they would have got it. Certainly, some people like our Stephen Hawking very clearly say he hasn't got it, despite his very high IQ. Okay, we'll continue in the next class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Harihi
Harihi
Om.
Om.
Thank you, everybody.